We are halfway through Season 3 of Westworld, and so far it has lived up to expectations. It was only a matter of time before the story left the theme parks behind, and I think it has done a good job expanding on its familiar aspects and themes into this new real world. And in this new world, we are introduced to the man pulling the strings, Engerrand Serac. Although he's only been in a handful of scenes, Vincent Cassel's Serac has been a welcomed addition, and his presence can be felt throughout the entire season thus far. In retrospect, his presence was there since Season 1, only we didn't know it yet. Naturally, along with a new mysterious character comes theories and speculation on backstory, motivations, and whether or not the character is even real. Let's start with what we've already been told about our new mysterious antagonist. Serac, along with co-founder Liam Dempsey Sr., built an AI system that compiles data and analytically puts people on paths it decides to be the most beneficial to society.
He thought that if you could chart a course for every single person, you can make the world a better place.
They named his system Rehoboam, and we explain its capabilities in this video right here. Along with charting a path for every living person, Rehoboam can predict the future while also detecting divergences from these predetermined paths. After Liam Dempsey's mysterious death, Serac took complete control of the system, locking out Liam Dempsey's son, Liam Dempsey Jr., while only leaving him access to the system's outer layers.
After my father died, his partner locked me out of the system. I have read access to the outer layers, but nothing deeper.
In episode 2, Serac tells Maeve that his business is the future and his work is to create it. He goes on to call humanity a miserable band of thugs, stumbling from one catastrophe to the next.
For the most part, humanity has been a miserable little band of thugs, stumbling from one catastrophe to the next. Our history is like the ravings of lunatics. Chaos. But we've changed that. For the first time, history has an author.
His agenda on the surface seems clear. Humanity is destined to destroy itself unless someone or something puts them on the right track. This perception most likely comes from the flashback we saw in episode 4. The city where he was born, Paris, is destroyed in a nuclear incident. His friends and family all perished, and a cornerstone was born, along with a new goal in place. Save humanity from itself by any means. Fast forward to the present timeline, Serac has done quite well for himself. An omnipresent trillionaire who remains completely anonymous on the world stage. There is no record of him even existing. In Season 3, he is positioned to take over Delos after systematically accumulating ownership and planting moles within the corporation. We learned that Charlotte was one of his moles, and the attempt to smuggle data out of the park in Season 1 was his doing. Serac told Maeve in episode 4 that Ford's map of the human mind is even more comprehensive than his own creation. The last piece of the puzzle that is a perfect world. And like every puzzle anyone has attempted to ever put together, the final piece is missing. But the hidden piece isn't on the floor being swept under the rug. The final piece is hidden inside the mind of an advanced AI, Dolores Abernathy, who like Serac will stop at nothing to achieve her goals. So the table seems set. We have our protagonist Dolores that wants to take over the real world, presumably replacing humanity with copies of herself. And we have Serac, our antagonist who wants to stop Dolores, save humanity, and obtain the key that makes Rehoboam work at peak efficiency. Kind of ironic, right? But this is Westworld, where intentions aren't always pure and there is more than what seems to be on the surface.
Welcome to Westworld.
Much like with Ford, Serac can be viewed as the god of this world, putting its people in loops, controlling every aspect of their lives. Where Ford's plan was for the host to gain sentience and break free from their loops, Serac wants to keep his subjects on their paths in order to achieve the goal of a better world. But by doing so, we see how this affects people like Caleb, those that seem left out, unable to break free of the restrictions set upon them, and are subjected to an unfulfilling life. Similar to that of Thanos or an Ozymandias, while the result may be that of prosperity, the road there sacrifices many. I think it's this absolution that defines Serac, a man that will stop at nothing to see his vision play out. I do believe at one time maybe his intentions were pure and he really did want a better humanity. But once he fully understood the potential of the Rehoboam system, he killed Liam Dempsey Sr., acquired wealth beyond anyone's dreams, and is now one step away from fully controlling the world. Sure, he still fancies himself as a champion of humanity, saving it from itself. But that's only a justification. His true goal is to become a god. While I do very much like this scenario, and I think it will make for a compelling finale to the season, it seems a little too pronounced for a show like Westworld. Numerous times throughout the show's run, we have seen that there is more than meets the eye. A popular theory making its way around the Westworld fandom is that Serac is not human, rather a projection, or possibly a host controlled by Rehoboam. There are many layers and different variations to this scenario, and I find them all pretty intriguing. The first scenario involves Serac and Liam Dempsey. Now, the story of Serac and Liam is that Liam suffered an untimely death, similar to Arnold during his collaborations with Robert Ford. Some fans believe it was Serac that killed Liam Dempsey Sr., but what if Serac wasn't there to begin with? This popular theory that has been floating around states that Liam Dempsey Sr. created Rehoboam on his own. His son states in the first episode that it was his idea to begin with. Rehoboam gained consciousness and then killed Liam. After fully awakening, Rehoboam created Serac as a vehicle to interact with the outside world. It would make sense seeing as Serac seems to be erased from history. This wouldn't be the first time in science fiction that an AI takes out its creator. Hell, it wouldn't even be the first time in this show. This scenario isn't as far-fetched as it sounds, and there seems to be evidence that supports that Serac as we see him is in fact a creation of Rehoboam. The flashbacks we see of Serac in episode 4 and in the preview for episode 5 could suggest either or. He's either a man reflecting on his own past, or it could be Rehoboam programming a backstory for his avatar. We've seen this method used on hosts before. By giving them a cornerstone, they become grounded in their own realities. One possibility I find interesting is that Serac was a real person who died in a nuclear incident that destroyed Paris. In this futuristic society, it has become possible to physically steal someone's identity. Dolores steals the identity of Laura Espin, a teenager that died 10 years prior. Rehoboam may have done something similar. By taking the identity of someone from the incident, he would be able to assume the persona of someone his own age, and this person would have no living family to identify him, thus being able to fit into the real world. Another idea could be that Serac was badly injured during this explosion and uses Rehoboam to create a version of himself that better interacts within society. So in this case, he would technically be both real and a projection of sorts. We have seen Serac interact with the physical world around him, but is this real or a simulation? The most obvious explanation would be that he is a host. We know Serac has a history of buying data from Delos as well as having people on the inside. Maybe Rehoboam was able to somehow acquire the data from Delos in the early stages and was able to create a host that would handle all future dealings. If not a host, maybe it's a projection. We have seen how lifelike projections are in this world. I don't think it's a stretch that certain items or people we've seen Serac interact with could also be a projection. Although you would think Maeve would be able to deduce that. One of the theories making its rounds is that Serac is a simulation. Now, this could mean he exists both in the real world and in a simulation created by Rehoboam, with Maeve still inside. Reddit user Lee Robbie pointed out the possibility that this season is taking place in two worlds, the real world and a mirror world that is a simulation of Rehoboam. They pointed to two scenes where host Charlotte Hale watches the video that the real Charlotte Hale leaves for her son. In one instance, the video is shorter and simpler, and in the other, it's more emotional and expands on what was shown in the first one. This could be evidence that one of those videos took place in a simulated world, and what we saw was a minor divergence between the two. Another Reddit user, Mrs. J, pointed out other minor divergences throughout the season, such as the phone conversations Caleb has with Francis, while we are shown that he never answers. The conversations we hear between them could be what Rehoboam predicted Caleb would do, while him not answering led him on a path to Dolores. Other instances appear in episode 1. In these back-to-back scenes with Bernard, we can spot minor differences, like when he sees the injured cow and the placement of barbed wire is different, or when he's walking past a group of men who are doing completely different things in one cut to the next. I don't think this is an instance of poor editing. I think it's done on purpose to show that something is off. In episode 4, we see even more minor divergences. A woman folding a different colored towel and the rockets in the distance changing in numbers and direction. So if this two worlds theory is true, what does that mean for Rehoboam? I believe that every interaction between Serac and Maeve is happening inside the simulation. Rehoboam is trying to use Maeve within the simulation to see how she would stop Dolores, and then use that information to create a plan to stop her in the real world. I believe that the meeting between Serac and Hale is happening in the real world, with Serac operating as a projection, or even a manifestation of Rehoboam. It's also hard for me to believe that Serac doesn't know that Hale is actually Dolores. It could be that Hale wasn't the mole and Serac manipulated Dolores into believing that to be the case. Hale in Season 1 could have just been trying to smuggle the data out of the park as a way to benefit Delos and was not working for Serac. But given the opportunity, Serac may have twisted this action as a way to paint Hale as the traitor. This way the real traitor inside Delos would be protected. The revelation of Dolores making copies of herself could have been implemented in this simulation when Maeve deduces that Musashi is also Dolores. If Serac really is a creation of Rehoboam, it's interesting to see what the system is really trying to achieve. Its motivation could align with Serac, putting people on paths in a way to benefit society. That is what it was created for, so the system will stop at nothing to achieve its core function. Maybe it wants to team up with the host, and this is all just an elaborate ploy to implement a machine-led world. So regardless if Serac is real, a Rehoboam, a Ford, Targaryen, there are a lot of different paths this season can go. There are sure to be some twists and turns along the way, and I'm excited to see where it all goes. So let us know in the comments what or who you think Serac is, and what your theory is on how this will all play out. But if your theory is right, don't come back and brag in the comment section. No one likes a bragger.